Welcome to the Tow Club Industry Podcast. This morning, I have Michael Farrell from Detroit Record Sales. And, kind of before we get started here, I wanted to let everybody know who's listening and watching that, I do have a relationship with Michael for a long time, have done business with Michael for quite some time on many occasions, and have enjoyed my relationship with Michael. So we're glad to have you on, Michael. Good morning, man. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you? And the only reason why you like me is because I don't curve my hat as much as everybody else.
Yeah, we oftentimes joke, hey, don't curve the hat too much. It's uncool.
Years ago, you made a thing on Facebook that said no more curved bills or something. Or it was funny. Everybody would grab you
That's
over.
right. I mean, I'm glad we could all get a chuckle about it. Michael, thanks again for coming on, and just kind of to get started a little bit here. I know your story, and like I mentioned, we've had many years of an online relationship together, and in and around the industry. But I wanted you to let everybody else know, man, like, what's your experiences in the industry, and kind of like how did you end up in the current situation at Detroit Record?
Well, we started, back in 2007 is when I took the company over,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of room for improvement into the industry, as you know.
Yeah.
In my opinion, everything is built kind of in the premise of, it's built just enough to get by. And that translates to, in my opinion, you can't gross $200,000 to $300,000 with other equipment and not have to put tens of thousands into it. So we found our niche to where we're not about quantity, we're about quality. So if you're, quite honestly, if you're, doing a lower gross income amount with equipment, people that are, not really working it very hard, meaning, excessively. Our
Mhm.
equipment, the longevity in comparison, there is no comparison. You can't tighten everyone else. The crucial pivot points on our application, we're sacrificing the part sales. We don't want those. And I think it's, again, quite the opposite
Nice.
in today's realm. So
Yeah.
this is where we found our niche, and we're happy to uh, be where we're at right now.
That's good, man. I
We're
mean,
not kicking the big guys, meaning,
right,
in the aspect of
right.
trying to compete with them and what they do.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
I want to get to that with you in a moment. And for whoever's listening, I mean, if it matters, and if people have any kind of regard for my experience in the towing industry, I've had difficulty wearing your equipment out. I mean,
sure,
I have talked about this. I think I bought 3 or 4 forklift attachments from you over the years, and I've beat the hell out of these things, and they just keep on ticking. I think
right.
one of them was almost 12 years old before we wore it out, and we discovered that we should have been maintaining a little bit better.
All right, and
Um,
thank you for saying that, because
yeah,
the testament to quality is that if you grease and tighten it, it's going to last forever. If you don't, then it's a waste of my time and your money, because we've
right,
given the consumer the provisions to do so. So we
right.
desperately want to see them take advantage of that and understand it. So it's a task on our end to educate the consumer, because it's different than everybody else. You
Yeah.
know, um,
No, I completely understand, and kind of what we were talking a little bit about, you not being one of the big, publicly traded companies that
right.
manufacture towing equipment, of which really there's 2 big ones, and then there's some medium ones, et cetera. But you
But they
not
all follow the same suit. They're all on the
right,
same wavelength. Plastic wear pads in between the tubes. There's no structural purpose for that. So you
right,
don't need plastic wear pads inside tubes to lift or tow a car. You
right.
know, um,
Yeah.
proven that over the last decade.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I wanted to ask just because you are not one of the larger companies, some of the listeners out there might be like, "Hey, who is Detroit Records?" I was wondering what type of equipment, can you tell everyone what type of equipment you currently specialize in, and which segment of towing are you primarily building stuff for? Light, heavy, etc. Like what are you what is most of your builds?
But we've focused on the light duty aspect of the pickup truck converting it into a wrecker. So the incognito effect, there was a deficiency in that area of towing. You know, let's be honest with each other. Initially, when those type of units came out, it was for people that, quite honestly, couldn't afford a record. It was subpar, and if you were doing a considerable less amount of duty cycle, then you were successful with it. You couldn't have the same, and we're the first ones to really, take the research and development, the R&D into that application. We've put our unit in 3D CAD, stress tested on the truck frame, and nobody else is interested in doing so. Either A, they don't have the resources to do so, or B, they're not going to take. They do have the resources, and that's going to impede on another product line. So why would they do that? So again, we found our niche, and we're very happy with where we're at. It gives us the opportunity to grow with the customer. We're very excited to see them continuously, not have downtime. I don't care what you buy. There's an old saying: if it has, you know, uh, I guess I don't want to say it too much in case we got. But, the point is, you're gonna have problems with no matter what you build. If it has tires and if it's a house, you're gonna have to. If you ignore it, it falls apart. So this is where again we're address the deficiencies, and we're excited to see these guys have success year after year after year. Because in our opinion, the industry is thus far programming the customer to buy new equipment every 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
Because most guys have come to the conclusion that, hey, I don't have these repair problems, but I want you to think about the guy that buys it used and then he's down, and think of what they incur, the downtime if they can't afford to buy a new truck every. So there's this, we're a savior to the mechanically inclined people. They see it, they want it. They Some people are just focused on name brands, and I get it. A lot of times in life, the bigger name brand is a superior product, but it's not the case when on the products we build. We only build 4 products, so
Right.
I really believe in my heart that when I lay my head down at night, that each and every person that buys one of our 4 products is benefiting their family, their business, you know, their bottom line in the equipment side of things. So
Right.
that's a heck of a I'm humbled to be a part of that, and it's a gift from God to be able to offer this to clients every day.
I think that judging by how people discuss your products online, judging by my experience, um, judging by, I mean, I know you know this. I mean, when I got my start in towing, I was actually building my own trucks.
Yeah,
And so when
I
you
met you at a
build
tow
your own,
show.
pardon me?
First time we met, and I don't know if I
It was
think
in
you.
Reno.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I remember that vividly, but my point was is, I used to build my own trucks. So as somebody who used to put
right,
their hands on equipment and build it, I've enjoyed following your builds throughout the years. And I've noticed, and in fact, many times I sort of whisper to myself, I'm like, holy shit, like, do they really need to do that like robust of like frame reinforcement? But it's like, I get what you're saying. I think that your efforts are being realized. And I think people are saying, like, hey man, these guys, they really, they sort of echo what I feel about your
right,
stuff, which is like it's built to work.
right.
Um, how I wanted to
Your
ask, go
your
ahead.
job as a consumer is not to buy chocolate or vanilla down the street for twice as much. I get it. But
Yes,
can we put, do we have to reinforce the frames like that? No. But out of 10 people that buy it, every one of them, all 10, is gonna overload it at some point, sometime, somewhere. So
yes,
let's not fake the funk. Let's be honest with each other.
yeah,
Life happens, and now you can approach that situation. You're going into war with the right weapons, and you're always better to have that extra than not to have it.
yeah,
As I tell people all the time, I'm going to come buy the truck in Detroit. No, buy it from, the place where you're at. They're going to treat you better if
right.
you spend money with
Have the
them.
relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't circumvent the local, buy
supply
that truck from
chain.
there. Spend the
Yeah,
extra. These trucks are going to gross hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Why are we worried about 5 grand?
yeah,
We
yeah,
want to
yeah,
focus on who the good dealer is, who's got the sharp mechanics. Buy a truck from
absolutely.
them. 'Cause some of
Yeah,
these dealerships won't. They'll hire any crackhead. Some of them will just hire straight up great guys. So it's your due diligence to make sure that you find that
yeah.
chassis manufacturer that's hiring. I don't care if it's one of which one it is. Just make sure that again they're taking care of their
And the
employees.
relationship matters, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing, is the relationship matters. Let me ask you, because you mentioned that you're mostly doing the wheel lift products. I noticed that a lot of people have been posting recently about the two types of carriers that you're building. One is, I believe, the Devastator,
Yep, and the low
and
loader.
the other is the low loader. As it relates to your wheel lifts, what is the ratio? Are you doing more beds lately, or are you still mostly wheel lift?
Those ticket items take us so much time to manufacture. So those big ticket items, the Devastator, the low loader, those are items that are, again, we're not doing quantity. We're doing quality. I mean, I'm doing, you know, less than this many beds per year
Okay.
because of the time that it takes us. And we're in no rush. I have no ambitions to um you know, cookie cutter these units because, I want my tail plates to be welded all the way around the
Right.
perimeter. I don't want every flatbed you see around the tail plate, it just starts falling apart. I want my cross members welded up and down and around every single cross member all the way down the bed. My cross members will never come loose. The deck sheet is welded all the way around the perimeter on top of the bed. I don't want to have these same inherent issues and deal with those. What a lot of people don't know is we were, for the bigger companies, a warranty center for many of years. So we have firsthand knowledge of how they broke, why they broke, and we had no interest in building that same, mousetrap and dealing with the backlash that you get and you feel bad for somebody to tell them, look, it's 10 grand to get that. They won't sell it like this. You got to buy it like that. And this is the way it is. So they're not mad at, at the manufacturer. They're mad at you because you told them and you're the
Yeah.
one that's gonna put it on. So I'd have bills for 10,000 and 7, 8 of it was parts. you
Yeah,
know,
no, I'm actually glad you brought that up, Michael, because yes, I imagine being a warranty center and repair shop for the other large brands has given you some insight, right? You can look at those and say, oh, that cylinder failed, or where that cylinder bolts to the deck, that part keeps failing. So that I'm going to call it a saddle where the cylinder attaches to the unit. Oh, you're going to redesign it. You're going to make sure it's better
right?
than
All
what
of our
everybody.
cylinders have a double seal on it, one on top of the wear band and one on the bottom. Most just
Right.
have the wear band and one seal in either direction it goes.
Mhm.
Ours has. You're right, and that's exactly what I don't want to deal with when we, buy these. When the customers buy these chassis and bring them to us. I mean, there's a lot that go. You know how much these trucks are costing
Oh, I
nowadays.
know. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think all of the listeners and watchers here, like, they're feeling the pain, and that kind of brings me to my next point, because I want to kind of remind the people that are listening that, generally speaking, there's towing equipment manufacturers, and then oftentimes there are independent dealers that install their products.
And that's a
It-
big difference, right? People don't
yeah, it's
realize
a huge
that.
difference. And so with you, and this is what I wanted to ask you, is you're in a really sort of unique space because you're building the equipment, you're also installing the equipment. I find that fascinating, but I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously you don't have a, let's say, call it a dealer network, so to speak,
Right.
right? But like,
And
do you
one day we
prefer that
will.
arrangement, or would you prefer to have a dealer network?
Well, what I'm sure one day we will. I mean, that's how the business concept of the bigger companies has done, and everyone's kind of adopted it. I don't know that we'll fit into that anytime soon, but I would like to think at some point somewhere someone's going to say, "How many units can you build per year? I want them all," and that
Right.
would monopolize my sales. So
Yeah.
I don't want to see that happen. But prior to COVID, and I don't know if you remember, but I had multiple dealers dropping trucks off here. I was like a Ford dealership out there, and
Really?
if someone was going to call and say, "Hey," and Ford was also giving special discounts if you were going to buy. But after COVID and the way the lay of the land, it's not like that anymore. So I
Right.
really feel like we were close to getting to that because a lot of these dealers, just want to sell trucks, and now the way the lay of the land is, it's not. I think they make money selling used trucks, not the new trucks, because you just can't
Right.
sell them like you used
Yeah.
to. They're not
No,
plentiful.
that makes a lot of sense, and I'm personally, I would love to see you, expand and sell more equipment and give the larger companies, take a little more of their pie, and not because I dislike them or whatever. It's just that
Bill Bottom said that at a talk show to me once. He said, if little guys like us weren't around, they could do whatever they want, how they want.
yes,
Thank
yeah,
God we're here to
yes,
set some type of bar,
yeah.
something.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely. And for I mean, I use a lot of, for example, Miller Industries products. I have that I think I've done a good job with them. They're doing a good job for me. However, I want to remind the listeners, like, be careful what you wish for, right?
right.
So if you say, well, I don't want to deal with this manufacturer because they're small and yada yada. Hey, well, you're not going to have a say in the market if you don't have companies that are competing with the larger companies. You're not
Sure.
going to have a say on what kind of equipment is being designed and engineered. You're not going to have a say on, warranty stuff. You may have trouble with the dealership experience because if the options are limited, then what are you going to do, right? The larger companies, they build for the masses. They don't build for specific end users.
Right.
And so I hope the listeners can understand the value of supporting, for example, Detroit Record Sales or other smaller manufacturers that are making niche products, right?
Yeah, did you see the new thing we came up with just to set down? And that came from a customer that said, hey, I'm always putting the car on my alarm,
Right.
and it was on his spring. We said, "Oh, we got spring covers to cover it." He's like, "But I still don't want to smash my spring cover. Can you
Right.
come up?" And we're like, "Well, you know what? You're right." And we neglected that for so long because of the way the alarm folds up. We
Uh,
would always say, "Hey, you don't need a special attachment. You have the ability to fold this arm up." Normally alarms are just welded together, and you have a
right.
fixed point. This one collapses on our unit, and kind
Yes.
of enables him to put it. It's structural in any position. You can put it in a triangle position if you wanted. And um, but he was right, and that's why we came up with it. And that only comes from listening to the clients. And the only reason why the unit is riding as soft as it does, lifting as much as it does, and lasting as long as it does is because we listen to guys like you that said, "Hey, I really could use this, or I really
Yeah.
could use that, for this
Right.
application." So
Or
I'm
this
sure
always
that we
wears out kind
yeah,
of thing.
I know
Always
that you
wears out.
were involved in that. The forklift attachment that had many revisions. There's now a window on the side for the hoses to kick out and have a little bit more. I think that was some of the things that you wanted to see. And again, I know and it's not just one person; it's everybody. Everybody's got something to say. When you hear it 3 or 4 times, you got to say,
Industry input.
"Yeah,
Industry input. That's what you
hey,
want.
maybe this is the right way to go."
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, that always makes it, a much easier, um, and to take pride in your equipment when you see, the satisfaction come from the client that bought it and suggested it, and you know,
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little, Mike.
yeah,
Every guest I've had on that is in or adjacent to equipment or either selling something to the industry, a lot of times we talk and Mike, because I see comments too, right? I'm on social media. We have my company has a page. I'm in these towing trade groups, etc. And so everybody's griping about the same thing. And my question to you really is like, everybody's griping about rising equipment and fleet costs.
yeah.
So, and I know you hear that, but I wanted to ask, everybody's got a different answer, but I wanted to ask, like, what is Detroit Record doing to kind of to tamp that down, to make sure that the increases aren't too crazy? Are you working with your suppliers, et cetera? Like, what are you guys doing to kind of protect towers?
Well, we're just building that superior product to last longer. That's the
Right.
that's what we're doing. We're sacrificing, putting wear pads in the tubes. We're sacrificing an inferior pivot pin that just, you have the ability to get your dollars worth now, much more. So we have no control over the cost of DOM and steel. And, we used to pay $400 for a 4x8 sheet of steel, and, now we pay 2,400. I mean, there's a significant rise all across the board for everybody. And it's not
Fixed
just
tech.
right. And I'm really seeing, a turnaround in the repo industry specifically because of all the events that have unfolded and where they're at today. They're saturated now. There's not enough guys. There's not enough insurance companies. There's not enough. So I'm hoping that, there's an old saying that, in a bad economy, the business goes to its rightful owner. When a good economy, anybody can make money. Everybody's spending it. In a bad economy, the business goes to the people that deserve it.
Right.
And I really feel like, as far as towers go, the more effort that you put into your business, the more it comes back to you. If you're proactive, you're gonna, have more of the phone ringing. If you're, reacting to the phone and trying to, that's not the same as. So it's hard for me to tell you that, one thing that we're doing specifically for everybody is just building quality equipment. I don't have buying power, so to speak. We don't buy from the mills directly.
Right.
We're just, purchasing from another steel company that, they buy from the mills, and
Sure.
we get what we get. And quite honestly, that's a lot of reason why everything is becoming modular. We're manufacturing our own tubes instead of buying tubes,
Got it.
because the standard sizing is so, you can't do anything the same thing twice.
Sure.
So production, that really created a problem. And there's a lot of innovation that we're doing. It's just related to quality, which translates to more money in your pocket. Again, how many plastic wear pods have you bought, and how many pivot pins have you bought? And these are things that, with the adjustability, it sacrifices the residual part sales that are, annually for the consumer.
Right.
So
I I find that interesting, Mike. I mean, so obviously it's here's my follow up to that is, and I want the listeners to really kind of pay attention to this, but in my experience, I think your equipment has served me very, very well.
good.
And I wanted to ask, apart from the fact that I'm sure you believe this, but I also happen to believe this, that your equipment is probably better than your competitors. Apart from that fact, how
It
is
has
your
to be.
equipment? What's
So
that?
it has to be.
Right. No, I agree. And
If
so
it wasn't, that we have no leg to stand on. We're not going to
right,
get, you
right.
know,
But apart from that fact, how is it? Is it priced competitively? Because I mean, I don't even go to the competition.
but that's relevance
I
in
do.
what you get what you pay for. Again, if you buy Red Wing work boots at somewhere, they're $200, $300 a pair, but they last 4 or 5 years. And the only reason why
Yeah.
you change them is because they look 4 or 5 years old. You
Right.
darn sure don't want to get them off your feet, because they feel good. But
Yeah.
when you buy the diehard boots, are 75, $100. You can't do 12-hour days in them. That's for darn sure. You're lucky to get 8 out of them. At lunchtime you want to take them off, and you have to buy a new pair every 9 months. So
Right.
after you calculate the wear and tear on your feet and the consumption of the product,
Yeah.
that was more expensive. You're cutting
Right.
your nose to spite your face. So
So it's
that's where
hard to measure it, is what you're saying. It's like, do you want a product that lasts longer, or do you want, a product that's cheaper but maybe
So,
doesn't?
and I don't know, guys tell me this all the time, but I replace my truck every 2 3 years. So I don't want to spend money with you when you're twice as much on this application than the next guy. Okay, I get it, but that's the mindset that they want you to have. You have to understand that.
Yeah.
That who does that benefit to buy a new unit every 2 to 3 years? It darn sure isn't the consumer.
No, no, and it's going to be hard to keep a handle on your operational costs if you have to
So
account for new equipment that often. But I
So
did
tell
want
me how the guy, my client that's got the unit for the past 10 years, just keeps making money over and over. How is that not better than the guy that's replacing the unit every 2 or 3 years?
right, right. No, that makes a lot of sense, and that leads me to a follow-up real quick, which is because I watch the videos, I follow, Detroit Wrecker,
Sure.
and by the way, whoever's listening, please follow Detroit Wrecker, because that's how you're going to learn to confirm what Michael and I are discussing right now. I wanted to ask, do you do a lot of remounting of your equipment? Because obviously, these repo guys, from what I understand, I'm not a repossessor, but from what I understand, they drive the hell out of their trucks. I mean, they have to drive a lot
You see
to
a
do
lot of guys
their
saying,
work.
"Oh, I had this truck for so long, finally getting rid. It's been, 3 or 4 lifts have been on it already." And I got guys that 10 years old, one lift, it's
Right.
still chugging it, and
And
it more of that one. It's on another one now.
right, I was gonna say they're
So,
wearing out the chassis. So my
yeah.
question to you was, are you doing a lot of those remounts? Like remounting your
Honestly, we don't, and that brought, it. I felt really bad recently. About a year ago, a customer that really loves our products said, how much to take it off this truck? I got a guy that wants my truck. It was a specialty type of truck, and told him, I said, the 10 grand that we charged, man, it's really at cost because you're buying our unit. That's where we're making money. That's where our
Right.
shop is set up to make a profit,
Right.
is selling that unit. So if I do that same installation, I can't do it for the same price. You
Sure.
follow me? So what's it going to be? 15? I mean, that you have to understand that we're willing to do the custom helper springs, the installation, the frame reinforcement, all for an efforts to sell more units, not
Right.
vice versa. I don't want to sell that labor. I really, people want us to bring, we get that at least once a week. Can I bring you my truck to get that? And the answer is no. I don't want to clog my guys with my competitors,
Right.
or for my competitor. If you're not
Yeah.
buying the unit, and I
Right.
respectfully want to decline to work for you,
Well,
that's
yeah, you want to sell your equipment and you
right.
want to be able to stand behind the labor for your equipment. That I'm sure it's a challenge for you trying to kind of own a competitor's product, and then the competitor has a warranty issue and they may or may not pay you, right,
Right.
to repair the issue with their product.
Right. And that's how we made a living, you know, long 10 years ago. It's been so a significant amount of time you know to apply that knowledge. It wasn't just for we didn't do that for a year or two. There was many a year. So again, and this is why a lot of our wiring has a Metro Pack connector, or Weather Pack in some areas and not in some areas. I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons why we do what we do, and it all arrived at experience. And when I get chewed out by you that you bought a unit from me, and
Yeah.
you're right, that shouldn't have happened. This is why you get a set of wireless tow lights and a set of corded lights. One of them failed on you. Now, I don't have
Want
this
redundancy. Yeah.
an O-ring that's 86 cents at Napa, but you're done now because it happened on Saturday morning and you can't get it till Monday. So
Right.
imagine the earful that you get from somebody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
guess what? Every customer gets a spare set of O-rings for each and every connection that's in there. I mean, this is all arrived at, experience and passion to, we want to make you proud. Again, if you're not making money with our equipment, you're darn sure aren't going to buy another one. And one thing's for sure, we're not going to be selling you parts for it.
Right.
When they don't like it when I answer the phone for part sales, because why do you need this? For what? You're not greasing it? You're not tightening it? Send me a
Right. Right.
picture. Let me see this. You shouldn't need this right now. Why do you need this so fast? And I've gone through it with you. I give it to you. And
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you put me in my place, said, look, I'm buying your equipment and leave me
Yeah.
alone. And I
Well,
get it.
yeah, no, and
I wear
even
my heart on
as
my sleeves.
yeah, yeah, even as towers, we learn our lesson too. I've been in the industry for a long time. I've had the um, I've had the pleasure of working with you. I've also worked with some of the larger companies, and I've learned, okay, what do I need to call Michael for? And what
Right.
do I need to call the big guys for?
Right.
Like if I buy their unit, I'm not going to bother Michael for anything for that. I'm going to,
We don't have a wrecker body, so
right,
I can't even offer that to customers. So
right.
I understand it completely.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, and that kind of brings me to my next question, man, is like obviously you've been doing this for a long, long time. You know the industry well. You've learned a lot about the different types of towers, and you've chosen to sort of specialize in the light duty market with lifts and now carriers. I'm a big fan of your low loader, by the way. Whoever's listening, check out the low loader. That's a pretty trick product.
yeah, a lot of towers don't buy it. It's the car enthusiasts that buy it. And the reason
Yeah,
why, a tower says to himself, well, I can save, 40, 50 grand and just go to, Home
tradition.
Depot and get some 4x4 logs or
Right,
some
right.
matrix or whatever. I don't
Yeah,
need that. I respect that. I
yeah.
understand that.
It's
But
a cost kind of
exactly, if it's
it's a
not
seesaw for them, right? Like
100%. I mean,
yeah,
I could tell you, till I'm blue in the face why my product's better. But
right,
if it doesn't fit your criteria, your business, then I get it. If you're not getting extra money to lay that bed on the ground, then it's not needed. Some of the times they don't need to lay that bed on the ground, but
right,
each and every one of these cars enthusiasts do. And
right.
these are, importing, cars that have, the ground clearance is just getting lower and lower. Cars are
Ferraris,
getting heavier and
Lambos,
heavier.
McLarens, etc. Yeah, no. I hear you on that. I wonder, just a kind of a follow-up on that. I'm wondering if you could maybe, without giving away secrets, kind of maybe tell us what's coming with Detroit Record? Like, what do you want to do? What new products are you thinking about providing?
We want to come up with a record body. We do. We don't want to come up with it wrong. We don't want to add another, what's the old saying, 5 pounds of in a 1 pound bag.
Right.
That's kind of where we're at. So we don't want to add yet another, to our repertoire until we have it to the point where. And so we always come to the conclusion of let's finite and fine tune what we have,
Right.
and then come to that. And as that progresses, you find other things to do. And at this point, what we're deciding as a company is to try to make some of our current products more effectively and efficiently. There's still some improvements that can be done, like a modular crossbar. We're going to come up with that here next. And
Can you explain that a little bit to those that are listening?
yeah, it's instead of a
how will
tube.
that benefit towers?
Well, it's going to benefit towers because it's going to have a lower profile than our current one.
So not a tube, it's an actual manufactured crossbar that has
They're
a
going to take our sides and they're going to click together like a,
Nice.
so everything's going to get welded. And we're kind of behind the times. The bigger companies have already done that. But it's good that we're coming late to the game because now we can improve upon. We're going to have a shorter height. We're going to have more clearance.
And how much clearance do you think you can gain with the modular crossbar, Michael?
It's not going to be that much. It's just going to be a half an inch. But
no, but that's
yeah,
for
exactly.
listening, half an inch is a lot, guys. I mean, if you've ever tried to sneak your lift under a vet or I'm trying to think of like a BMW M5.
Right.
Yeah, like for those that are listening, a half inch may not like move
And
the
listen, and the truth is, it's a half an inch in one aspect. On other aspects of the crossbar, it's not the whole complete crossbar is going down.
But it's the belly.
Well, what's going to
Right.
help is the arm that swings around the tire. That
Right.
whole area is going to be significantly because of where the pivot point is and how it's recessed into the bar instead of afterthought, buying a tube, welding it,
Right.
having something on top, the plates, and this is just things that I think are going to help with production. We'll be able to make them faster. And, Lord knows we don't have a problem selling them. It's our problem is, being able to come up with the units in a timely fashion. That's always been our problem. Everyone's always wanted, not, there used to be
Want it
times.
yesterday.
Well, yeah, and people say I can't wait 2 months. I'm gonna have to go somewhere else. I don't want to go anywhere else, but I don't have 2 months. And
Right.
thankfully now we're not. We're in more in the 2 week, 3 week area, which is huge improvements and strides. So the crew that's here, we're blessed. Everybody here is very passionate, and there isn't somebody that isn't here that doesn't want to be here. We used to have 25 people working here, and it was a fight. Some stuff wouldn't go out the door.
Yeah.
And now everything goes out the door. It's right. Everything is, and we're doing more with less people. So that's a huge.
Efficiency is key. I've talked about this on the episode before with some
And
other.
I'll tell you something that for all business owners need to hear it. And the reason why we're doing better is because we're paying our guys, better. We're taking,
Yes.
and that's the bottom line. We have more quality people making more money and less mediocre people making less money.
Right.
So there's always that conundrum. And you got to find your niche.
You
But
got to find that sweet spot.
and we were always in the other end of the spectrum because service workers are bread and butter. So I had to keep 4 or 5 mechanics to working on these trucks that, if it was competitors to bring it here. Well, now we don't have that. After COVID, the workforce depleted drastically.
Yeah.
We had to make a decision. Where are we going to focus our attention? And, again, the people that are here, my wife, the engineer, the plant manager, I just love seeing everybody corresponding together and congregating. I know that there's magic happening between hand. It's not just my passion; it's now theirs too, and it really shows when somebody calls. The reviews, the efficiency.
That's great, man. I wanna back you into a corner a little bit, only because I'm being a little selfish here. Your record body that I know you have plans for. I wanna make you a little uncomfortable here and like give me an ETA on that.
Yeah, and I've done that so many times. I stuck my foot in my mouth. I went
No
on.
promises. I don't expect any promises. Is this like a 12-month project, 18 months?
Yeah, I would think that you would I've been saying that for the last 2 years though. So I'm hoping this year, every year, in the beginning of the year like this, I'm hoping that at the end of, this time next year, we're talking about, how many would you like to order?
That would be
And
cool.
that would be great. I just don't want to sacrifice the current line. One of the things that I'm really proud of is, for example, all the 1.0 units that we built.
Right.
Not the manufacturer that upgraded to the 2.0 and left all that high and dry.
Right.
I'm still producing parts
For
for
those
that,
units.
for all the
Yeah.
people that buy it used, or all the people that bought it for me. You can't buy one new, but I'm
Sure.
still making the tubes, still buying the cylinders, still buying the
Right.
things and accessories. Clearly not as much, and hopefully it tapers off to where we're not at that point. But again, I'm afraid to implement another one, go through all the things and the gamut of emotions that we went through the first ones, and you got to learn. There's a smart
Yeah.
saying, an old saying: a smart man learns from his own mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So
Yes.
we got to focus on being smart. I don't want to implement another product and then now we're in a revision. I want to have the 2.0 come right out the first time,
Right.
and
Right.
then you can really make it. And that's one thing that I admire of the other manufacturers. They build the same thing for so many
Yeah.
years. We may not understand that as a consumer, but boy, does that make it affect efficiency for them.
It's still impressive. It's impressive to be able to scale production. I mean,
Right. And again,
that is,
100%. And
yeah.
what they do is something that I don't want to do.
Sure,
You know,
yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I mean, it's impressive, but mainly it's impressive to guys like you and I because we look up at it and we say, man, I don't know if I want that headache. But yeah,
it's a lot.
it's
Imagine
still
having all
impressive,
the dealers. Some dealers don't, have the same knowledge as other ones, and they don't
Yeah,
share it. And the consumer is the one who gets the butt end of the stick of it.
right,
So,
right.
my advice is whether you buy our equipment or not, I would separate your money to go to the right people. I know things are easier for you when it's got a red bow and a package on it, but
Sure.
there's another price that comes with that. Every time
Yes.
you point your finger at somebody, there's three more pointing back at you, and you really got to be humble enough to figure out what three things am I. If you buy a truck that's already got the chassis on it, well, now you just circumvented the local dealer. Now, when you need warranty, where are you going to take it? Not to the place you bought it from. So, I like to see people spend that extra time and money. I hate it when guys say, well, you drove 500 miles to save $5,000 on the chassis. That truck's going to gross potentially 300,000 this year. What is
Right.
$5,000? Spend it figure out what dealerships got the badass mechanics, buy
Yeah.
a truck from them, have your equipment continuously, and towers lose that relationship with their dealership because they're circumventing them. Imagine if you bought every single chassis, paid $5,000 extra for every single one, but they know who you are. I bet you'd get free oil changes, an account out of the deal.
Yeah.
It really, makes sense. And one day I may change my tune where we're buying chassis and doing that too. But right now, my focus is equipment, equipment, equipment. Bring me the chassis you want, and I will install it.
Sure.
And that's where I'm not. Is it gas, diesel, black or white? Don't care. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. You're gonna do it regardless.
right? They all have 34-inch wide frames. Doesn't matter. Every truck manufacturer buys the frames from the same people. So I think it's international or something. But the point is, you are going to do yourself a favor when you start calculating your moves, as a tower. That's my advice to, guys, in the industry.
Yeah.
Listen, when something happens and you got to get it, and I understand, there's whatever reason you need it now, just got an account, there's an accident, you need to replace it. I get it. I understand that. But I just don't want people to lose sight in the fact that, these are things that when I tell it to people, they're very thankful,
Right.
because nobody's really broke it down to them in that fashion and got them to think, a couple steps ahead like that. What
Sure.
happens when your truck's down? You're done. Now you built
Yeah.
up the
Well,
momentum and you're giving it to somebody else.
and then when your truck breaks down and and the consequence, sometimes it's a consequence of you tried to save money somewhere, and then you should be thinking like, oh man, was that, like you mentioned, going through a bunch of hoops to save a few $1,000. Well, sometimes this what's that saying? You step over a dime to pick up a penny.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not a good strategy, and oftentimes it's not a good strategy because there's value in convenience, and people that don't put a value or an emphasis on their own time, oftentimes they get the short end of the stick in these deals. You got to value your own time.
again, the guy that buys that truck used from the guy that's 3 years old, now every, bushing and pin is, and it's just a shame. I wish I would have thought to show you the stuff that I have that's extra, but it's, if you do your due diligence and you do your research, you're gonna see, the stuff that we're doing is just because of, we don't want, the residual part sales, man. You should be able to have the equipment, and your kid have the same control
Sure.
handle, same pivot
Man,
pin.
if you were a publicly traded company, man, your shareholders would not be happy because
Well, and that's
you're
part of
looking
the
out for
reason.
small towers. I get it.
Yeah, it's a
But
family,
it's refreshing to
orientation.
hear it, Michael. It really is. And I want to remind the listeners, in the video description and in the podcast description, there'll be a link to Detroit Records website. And please go on there and look at their products. They serve in my opinion, they serve a very
Clientele.
important niche
Yeah.
for towing, particularly for not just towing, but the adjacent products like the forklift attachment. If you're a tower and you have a storage yard and you don't have one of Michael's forklifts attachments, you're really missing out. We've enjoyed, I think, 4 of them over the years, and they've just been fantastic. Michael, I wanted to leave you with something though, before I let you go. I appreciate your time, by the way. But I wanted to know from you, and I ask everybody this, and this is kind of a standard question, but where do you see towing, let's say like in 5 years? And what do you see Detroit Record doing to kind of stay competitive? I've talked to a lot of guests about how things are changing. Like, where do you see it? What do you
Well,
see?
great question,
Yeah.
because I worry about that at night. I mean, you see these things about autonomous repos. Ford made a patent recently that they're
Yeah,
gonna, wow, that'd be a big blow to, an industry. And these autonomous driving vehicles, if
yeah,
there's a problem, they could potentially drive themselves. But that's a great question, because I worry about that all the time, and I'm, always wondering where where they're going to take us, and when, I know that you probably understand what the Jetsons cartoon was, as a kid,
right.
so at this
I'm trying to
point,
get there, man.
right? Well, and I've been waiting. When are we going to see?
Yeah,
So
not soon
we're
enough.
going to come up with the Jetsons tow truck. I mean, that's
Right.
my fear.
Right.
When is thing going to start? And then
Yeah,
what are we going to do?
yeah.
Um,
Well, a lot of this is happening in your backyard, Michael. I mean, for those of you who didn't pick up on this already, Michael's based in the greater Detroit area, and a lot of the changes in automotive are being born out of that area, are being discussed out of that area.
For
Uh,
example, you're trying to get with the electric car company, and
right,
applaud
right,
you for trying to be the trendsetter. And then a lot of guys don't see the relevance. There's a lot of backlash about the electric, but there's a
sure.
lot of also benefits to it too. To all the
Yeah,
guys doing short runs and aren't doing long distance,
right.
and I
Yeah.
see a tremendous benefit for them.
We're starting to see the electric fleets come to realization. I've talked with a couple of other guests on some prior episodes, and I'm going to be obviously talking to you very soon. I'm going to be taking a trip to your area to demonstrate, do a demo of an electric chassis that we can hopefully, have you upfit for us or somebody upfit for us. And we are, I think, when we talk about the future, I mean, all of some of these ideas that I think are being floated are probably quite far away, not as close as we may think. Um, I think the juice has to be worth the squeeze for the manufacturers. But for end users, and like you mentioned, Michael, the electrics do make some type of sense because of the reduced maintenance. So if your use case as a tower, like mine, our trucks average about 135 miles or 125 miles, I think, on each shift. So for me, if I can find an electric chassis that does that for me, that makes a lot of sense. And so we'll see. And just recently, obviously, there's been some groundbreaking stuff with some new vehicles that are on the market. For example, I'll just bring it up. Everybody knows about this Tesla Cybertruck, but some of the things that it has debuted with are very, very interesting, such as the 48-volt onboard electronics, which is a first, such as steer-by-wire, which is a first. Some of this stuff is not going to make it into my space or your space, but it is relevant to towing nevertheless, because towers got to deal with these things, right?
Well,
You
can
know,
I just interject? My ADHD wants to kick in real quick. In regards to that, and I find it, astounding that you guys aren't able or haven't gotten provisions implemented for charging for when the electric car, you pick it up and it catches fire and gets, now they got to be in these concrete. Who's paying for that? Who's, to me, that is,
well,
you
that's
now as a tower have to incur this cost because
yeah,
of the, whatever.
yeah. Because
And
yeah. In other words, is it worth what the savings are, what the proposals are as far as
yeah,
saving to the
there
environment?
has to be a way that towers can unite for some way, somehow, and play the game the way it needs to be played. Lobbyists, money, and so if every tower right now threw $1 in a fund to get, and hey, when we tow these, that there have to be an electric car in a concrete
Sure,
barrier wall that it's going to cost me 3 million to set my yard up for.
sure.
There has to be some type of
Well,
acknowledgement, compensation that, the guy just doesn't have to keep taking it on the left hook,
of
right
course.
hook, you
No,
know.
of course. And what's interesting is that your email box is going to be full of politicians asking you for money now. You realize that, right, Michael? I'm joking. I'm joking. I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't want anything to do with
no,
that.
no. And that's the thing. And you're right. The government is oftentimes not well connected enough to industry to understand how it impacts industries. We've seen that a lot. And I plan on having more guests on in the future. You
Sure.
may enjoy some of this content. I hope those that are listening enjoy some of this content that can better explain that. We have a couple executives from some electric vehicle startups that have shown interest in being guests. So
Right.
I'd like to hear what they have to say,
Yeah.
because I think that
Well,
some
imagine the one that steps up, says that they're gonna, hey,
right,
we know what, we're gonna compensate, we're gonna take care of
right,
this aspect
where we
of,
have a solution.
yeah.
Or right. I mean, we've had some of this content on earlier episodes. I plan on having more. I plan on also trying to learn how this is going to affect you, how this is going to affect me, what the rest of the industry should be doing. But man, Michael, this has been great, man. I've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. I want to remind towers again, all of Detroit Records information will be in the podcast and video description. And I also want to remind towers, if you aren't willing to know, don't tow. It's really as simple as that. And if you don't know, you can ask people like Michael. You can ask experts in the game who can help guide you through equipment decisions. Michael, thanks again, man.
Thank you, brother. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
All right. Take care,
Talk
man.
to you soon. Yes,
Have a
sir.
good one. Talk
You too.
soon. All right.